Kablooey kablam, your favorite game is a sham. In the modern age of gaming, it has never been more competitive. And I'm serious, has anyone else noticed this as of recent? It seems like everyone nowadays is debating which game is better than the other game, and it gets to the point where it's so brain rotting that I just have to take a step back from social media, Twitter specifically. Look at this masterpiece of a $70 Sony game. It's got ray tracing. It's got ray tracing. It's also got ray tracing. I bet the Xbox and Nintendo fanboys are quaking in their boots right now. Don't even get me started with Tears of the reused assets. That game was so bad it didn't even have ray tracing. Maybe it's just me, but I don't remember games being compared this aggressively when I was growing up. Every day I log onto the internet, I see some dude nitpicking a very specific shred of grass from a Sony game to prove that PlayStation has fallen off. And the weirdest part is that there's so many people in these dumb discussions that believe their opinion is a fact. And I'm not saying that as some preachy dude with a beanie who's like, yeah, you know, opinions are cool. Some of you guys kinda need to be humbled. And you know what? This is humbling. Objectively good video games do not exist. But what are you talking about? You mean to tell me that Tears of the reused assets is not objectively good? No, it's not. You might like a game, you might even love a game very much, but that does not mean it's good from an objective sense. Objectivity is the quality or character of something being objective. Lack of favoritism towards one side or another and freedom from bias, meaning it's a fact. It took one Google search to figure that out. It's simply impossible to say that something is objectively good because that's an oxymoron. You can't say something is factually good. That doesn't even make sense. In order for a game to be factually good, that would mean that everyone in existence who has ever played the game would believe it's a good game, meaning that it would be impossible to not like the game. Except that's just never the case. No matter how good Spider-Man 2 is, people are still not gonna like it. These are not objectively good games. You can argue that they're fantastic. I personally love Spider-Man 2, and Tears of the Kingdom might be one of the best games I have ever played. Both of these games were insane to play last year. So there you go. No opinion is incorrect, even if it's a really bad hot take. Anyways, the video's over. I'll see you guys later. Peace out. But hold on, there's actually more to this, because the amount of people who are claiming objectivity as of recent is kind of scary. I feel like it should be obvious that opinions are subjective, right? So why are we so aggressive with the debating? Why are we dogpiling each other and doxing each other? Why can't we just, you know, say we like The Last of Us? Call me dramatic, but I think it's starting to harm gaming as a whole. This is such a huge problem going on right now. It may sound harmless that people are constantly comparing games to one another and ranking them against each other, but do you know how much toxicity is being spread through this? And I mean that in terms of gaming communities and the development of new games. I don't understand why every time a new Nintendo game or a new Sony game releases, we constantly have to compare it to the competition. Why can't we just say a Sony game is good and the Mario game is good? Why do we always have to put them to battle to determine which one is better? They're both fantastic games. Who cares if one is slightly better than the other or one's more polished? It's two great AAA games that were released in the modern day. That is not common, alright? You should be celebrating this. But on the other hand, I do understand the other side's argument as to why competition is so important. Because theoretically, if you are constantly comparing games and determining which one is better, then it sort of naturally raises the bar for developers. Sony is not going to drop an utterly terrible game because they know the consequences they will receive from the competition. They are being held to a very high standard, and high standards are good because that's what makes better games. However, the part that I don't like is that everyone seems to critique games in a formulaic fashion. There's usually a set amount of rules to game design that every game has to follow to be good or bad. This is why people believe objectively good video games exist, because they are correct to an extent. There are objective features that most players do enjoy. For example, most players would enjoy a video game that is not buggy and has a ton of glitches. So as a game developer, you should be striving to please most players by not creating a buggy mess of a game. That doesn't mean you cannot enjoy a buggy mess of a game. I enjoy my fair share of games that are very buggy, but objectively, most players do not prefer a game that is littered with bugs and glitches. So obviously, I do think that developers should be striving to make a game that most players will enjoy to an extent. Obviously, game developers shouldn't be releasing just whatever buggy mess piece of garbage game, but at the same time, I feel like through pinning down very specific details that are good and bad about a game and aggressively shoving it down the developer's throat every time they release a game almost creates a restrictive atmosphere for creating new games. Here's an example of a game I really like that doesn't necessarily follow all of the objective parameters of what makes a good video game. Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. I won't lie to you, this is a game with a lot of filler, and it lacks a lot of features that a lot of other Zelda games have. Some people really don't like that you have to sail the seas and sit there for a very long period of time doing nothing. And a lot of people don't like being stopped right at the end of the game to explore this massive map for a bunch of Triforce pieces. But you know what? I actually like those aspects of the game. I fucking love sailing the seas like a Giga Chad. Even though nothing may be happening until I reach an island, it's the feeling of you, yourself, sailing across this empty sea to find a small island that makes it so enticing for me. Another thing, sometimes islands don't have music and you're just wandering around the island in silence with nothing but the sounds of waves and the wind. It creates this explorative atmosphere, and when you eventually leave, the soundtrack kicks back in. I may sound crazy for saying this, but it makes you appreciate the music even more. It makes you notice that the soundtrack exists, and that somehow makes it better? Also, the Triforce quests just never bother me, because I'm already exploring all of the islands when I'm playing through the game normally, so it's nothing to me. To most people, it's seen as this thing that just artificially drags the game out and bogs it down. Services nothing aside from being filler. But to me, I absolutely love it, and not just that, this is probably like my favorite game ever. Like, I love Wind Waker. If Nintendo followed all of the game development rules when making Wind Waker, then the game just wouldn't be Wind Waker. It would be something else entirely, and that just would never carry the same weight for me. My point with all of this is that when you're trying so hard to fit a game within the boundaries of what is quote-unquote objectively good, you tend to overlook how good some games really are despite some of its flaws. And in some weird cases, how good a game can be because of its flaws. A game series I started playing recently is the Xenoblade Chronicles games. Now, something to know about these games is that they're not very polished. The jump animation looks like this. That is hilarious. And there's tons of other issues you can point out about these games. Just like most RPGs, sometimes you're forced to grind or pick up side quests just to reach the appropriate level. There's a lot of walking in big, empty, open spaces with nothing but enemies and collectibles. The game graphically doesn't even look that great, even on the Switch. Theoretically, this sounds like a mediocre game, but damn, I am loving these games so far. I'm currently playing through Xenoblade 2, so I will only speak on Xenoblade 1 without spoilers, of course. But despite some of its issues that you see right off the surface, Xenoblade is truly a game made by passionate developers who made something so good and addicting that you cannot turn away from it. Everything from a beautiful art style to an extremely ambitious story. And then you'll have one of the best gaming soundtracks you will ever hear, I promise you that. It is an amazing game from front to back. Is it super polished? No. Will most players enjoy it? Probably not, it's a JRPG. But was it completely awesome? Yes. Yes, it was. You like comparisons? Let's compare Super Mario Wonder to prove exactly what I'm saying. Super Mario Wonder is just one of those games that come to mind when I think of a game that follows all of the rules of objectively good video games. It's one of the most flawless games I have ever played. There's not many critiques I have for it. I probably have more critiques for Xenoblade than I do for Super Mario Wonder. But which one is better? Which one offered me a lot more fun and that I loved playing more? The answer for me is Xenoblade every single day of the week, and it's not even close. It all ties back to this. Yes, it is important to factor in all of the objective features that everyone wants in a video game. But at the same time, if you personally loved a game despite it having more flaws than, say, another game, you can proudly say that you love that game and you want more of it. Sometimes games with flaws are better than perfect games because while they may be suffering in one area, it might excel in another. If games like Wind Waker or Xenoblade followed the rules, they would not be the games they are now, and that is a fact. So may I ask you, do the rules have to be so aggressively restrictive? Can we stop harassing Sony fans because The Last of Us has too much walking? Yes, the game has a lot of walking, but guess what? A fantastic story makes up for it, and you know, the walking is a bit of the experience. You can't have The Last of Us without the downtime. You can't have unique experiences without the uniqueness. Anyways, thank you all for hearing what I have to say in today's video. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with the bell like the Giga Chad you are. And always remember that the only thing that makes a game objectively good to you is if you personally love it. But Matthew, the game has ray tracing.